Hi, welcome to another episode of Real Talk, Come Follow Me. Ganel-Lyn and I are really thrilled that you're here with us. This is going to be a tumultuous week, historically.
It is.
And I think this
Emotions
year as
are
much
high.
as any.
Yeah.
So
Be kind.
good luck. Maybe we could be cheerleaders this week would be a good thing. But speaking of cheerleaders.
Yes, we have a few.
We have a few, yeah. Rhonda, she sent us something, a note that we really appreciate. She said, absolutely live for your episodes every week. Best part of my week. I love that they are short but filled, chock full. Keep it up.
Don't you love chock
So we
full?
will. I like that phrase. It's a weird phrase, but I like it.
Yeah. Thanks, Rhonda.
Thank you, Rhonda. We will keep it up.
We will keep it up. And let's dive right in. Mormon 7 through 9.
Mormon 7 through 9.
7 through 9, yes. And
I speak unto you as if you were present.
Right.
Which is an interesting gift of a seer, to be able to move through time in a visionary way.
Did you want to mention the Book of Mormon Bible?
Yeah, so one of the
connection?
things I'll say, and I don't know if this is 100% true, but I find it's a good paradigm to think, because Moroni is going to talk about in these chapters about our day and the influence of the Book of Mormon. And so let me just give you one quick verse here. It's Mormon 7 verse 9. And it can be a little confusing because he says this and that. This means this book, the Book of Mormon. That means the Bible, okay? So that's where it goes. This is the Book of Mormon. That is the Bible. So I'm going to read it in the clarifying way. He says, for behold, the Book of Mormon is written for the intent that you may believe the Bible. And if you believe the Book of Mormon, you will believe, or if you believe the Bible, you will believe the Book of Mormon also. And if you believe the Book of Mormon, you will know concerning your fathers and also the marvelous works which were wrought by the power of God among them. And so as you think about maybe some of the differences between the Book of Mormon, I've heard it explained this way, and I like thinking of this generally, and that is the Bible, especially the New Testament, has kind of it's like an eyewitness of Christ's life. Mm-hmm. So it's more how Jesus was born, how he was, baptized, and how he performed miracles, and how he was suffered in the garden and was crucified and so on, and resurrected. And so it's more of a how. Because all of that didn't happen in the Book of Mormon tends to focus more on why. And so we get a lot more in the Book of Mormon on why we need the atonement, the effects of the fall, and how the atonement is for much more than sin. It's for insecurity, weakness, any type of broken or woundedness. And so maybe that might be a way you think of the Book of Mormon, is it's more focused on why Christ did what he did.
I really appreciate that, because I think sometimes there's a little bit of a debate of like the Bible, the Book of Mormon, right? Mm-hmm. And who needs more of our heart? And I think it gives us a different perspective. I love...
Yeah. A how and a why put together.
A this and a that.
And so you can see a this and a that so that you can see the marvelous works of God.
I love that. I love that and appreciate that. Chapter 7 is, I think, talking about a little bit of what we discussed last week, about our circle of influence and what that looks like. In verse 4, it says, know ye that ye must lay down your weapons of war and delight no more in the shedding of blood, and take them not again, save it be that God shall command you. Now, most of us are not, unless you're in active military duty, you're not thinking about weapons as actual weapons, but especially this week with the election, I think social media has shown a war of words that we all seem to easily participate in.
Yeah, you can hurt someone maybe even worse without a physical weapon.
Yeah, and the weapons of an unkind word, I think it can be even more painful. And so just in October conference, our prophet was pretty clear about one area in which we've used words maybe to hurt one another. And he said this, President Nelson said, our black brothers and sisters in the world over are enduring the pains of racism and prejudice. Today I call upon our members everywhere to lead out in abandoning attitudes and actions of prejudice. And he added, I plead with you to promote respect for all of God's children. And I think what a powerful invitation for all of us to check ourselves, right? Where are our biases? Where are we hiding behind a screen and we're saying things maybe online that we would never say if we were in person? But those words are hurtful. And I think more than anything, as the Savior is preparing to return, he's watching us hurt each other and tear each other apart with words more often than on a battlefield.
Yeah, and I think it's a significant way to really think. I hesitate to ever get to the point where it's like, well, that doesn't apply to me, especially when it comes to something as significant. There is clearly hurt going on because of this. And multiple prophets
Yeah.
or apostles spoke about this in conference. President Nelson just seemed to be very clear and emphatic about it.
And generational pain, you know, whether we're talking about race issues or other trauma, that sometimes when we meet someone, we don't realize they're bringing generations of pain in their work life or home life, and interacting socially with each other in a more tender way, to just acknowledge that we don't maybe have the history of the person we're interacting with, and so be careful and check yourself about the words you're using. Yeah.
So when we go in here, I'm going to kind of shift gears a little bit. Moroni's book is interesting. It says in there, I know your day and I can see your doing. He has a very clear vision of what's happening for us. But it seems like he has no idea what's happening with himself, because he tries to end the Book of Mormon at least 3 times. And then it's like, surprise, I'm still alive. I guess I'll write more.
Do you ever have that where you say goodbye? Like, my kids are always like, Mom, you already said goodbye. I'm like, let's do it one more time. Now I'm going to call it the Moroni farewell.
The Moroni farewell.
3 times.
It's just like he keeps doing it. So I'll do this really quickly, and I'm sure you'll see this in other Come Follow Me resources. But his first farewell is right here at the end of Mormon chapter 9. You know, and he says right at the end, and may he bless them forever through faith on his name, or through faith on the name of Jesus Christ.
Is that verse 37?
Amen. Verse 37, yeah, chapter 9, verse 37. So there's one farewell, and then it's like, he's like, oh, I'm still alive.
I guess I'm here.
Let's put the book of Ether in and then add some more. And so, or actually says, let's put the book of Ether in. So at the end of Ether 12, verses 38 through 41, is a second farewell.
He's like, well, I told you all about the Jaredites.
Yeah. And he tends to get more optimistic.
Yes. Like maybe he's getting older. He's like, no, I'm dying next week. I know I am. I know I am.
And then the third one is, of course, at the end of the actual Book of Mormon in Moroni chapter 10 at the end there. And so anyway, it's just interesting. It's almost like, well, I'm still alive. I guess we'll keep going. And you can kind of see him soften towards himself, because he does say let me see if I can find it really quickly, in chapter 8 at the beginning, it's so sad. Verse 3, and my father was killed by them. So we get his dad passes away, and I remain alone to write the sad tale of the destruction of my people. You can just hear him, like, just tears as he's writing this in the plates. And then he says, whether they slay me, I have no idea. And whether I write to hide up the records in the earth, and whether I go, it really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where I go. I don't know if they're going to kill me. I don't have any more ore. Apparently he finds more because he writes more. But he's like, I have none, and I'm alone, and I have not friends nor whither to go. You just imagine the loneliness he's sitting in. But you'll notice a more optimistic Moroni as you continue on. But right here, it's pretty sad.
When you were just talking, I was thinking about our Real Talk audience that are maybe grandparents and or great-grandparents, and they're watching their friends and loved ones pass on, and they're still here. And oftentimes, I think that demographic wonders how much of a use they are, especially during COVID, and they've had to isolate. I don't know, as you were talking, my heart was turning towards them that Moroni gets you. That feeling of like, I don't know what good I'm doing anymore. And I've said to grandparents in our life, you are of value, and yet I know they're lonely, and I know they've said goodbye to a lot of people, and I know you lost a grandparent.
I know I had not thought about this. I did not. You've got me on like an emotion. I was not. Yeah, my grandma died at the beginning of COVID, and she had dementia for 7 years, and so grandma, she's kind of slowly died, her mentally, and as you just talk about that, she said these words every day.
Yes.
I feel lonely. I don't know who you are.
Yes.
You got me with that one.
I know. Well, you were teaching me that, and the Spirit was kind of nudging me to be aware and kind of to recognize our Real Talk audience that is in that demographic feeling like they're not of purpose, because I think we read Moroni and we see, no, we already know he's going to give us some really cool things, and we don't want him to disappear yet. And I feel that way about the grandparents in our lives.
Yeah. Why am I still alive?
Yeah.
Why can't I just go?
Because they don't think they're
gonna keep me here.
Yeah, they don't think they're creating or contributing in any way, and they really are.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you for sharing that.
Sorry to make the water
worse. No, it's okay. I love Grandma, so it's good. It's validating. I appreciate that.
She's cheering us right now.
I'm going to write her name in here after this episode. So thank you. Do you want to go into chapter 8?
Yeah, I think this is one of those, as an author, I always feel a little validated because verse 12 is like, could you please not condemn me for the imperfections of this record? I've written and published with Covenant 7 books, and every single one of them have flaws, you know? And so I remember interacting with Sam, our editor. We share her, and
Love Sam.
And I think it was my very first book when big edits were happening, and she's like, Ganel-Lyn, let me just give you some advice. Like, only the scriptures don't need editing, right? And, and yet here in chapter 8, verse 12, Moroni's like, please don't condemn. Behold, I am Moroni, and were it possible, I would make all things known unto you. He's limited. And when I've been editing, and we've worked on a book that's coming out soon, right, that they have to take things out, and it makes it a stronger record. And I wonder if Moroni was struggling because he wanted to include so much. And there was a limit to the or when you were saying that. Like, that's like when we run out of ink or paper.
Yeah, or just run out of, like, I have all of this, but my resources don't equal my, like, I don't have as much opportunity as I have to give. Yeah. It makes me really think about, going back to what we talked about at the beginning regarding race, is just people having so much to give, but being oppressed in a way where they don't have the resources. Right. So what do? Let's get them the resources. Well,
and I think I also love that this verse is kind of calling out, there are a lot of critics of the Book of Mormon. We have spent this year with you discussing this book of scripture and trying to bring out the real life of the Book of Mormon to apply to our lives. And I love that Boyd K. Packer invited us in 1974 to apply more of a lens of faith when you're considering the flaws of the Book of Mormon. He says, move from criticism to spiritual inquiry. And I think we all can do well to model that, because we are going to stumble upon, there's so many resources and YouTube videos and bloggers out there that are dissecting the Book of Mormon, trying to prove or disprove certain aspects of that. We haven't taken that approach on this show, but we really have, I think, tried to have a more spiritual lens and a real life lens to what this record provides. And it brings to mind a situation. I work on a couple of other projects regularly, and on one of them in particular, my camera guy has been honest about this, but he's shared his faith crisis. And we've talked publicly about it, so I'm not sharing anything that he hasn't shared. But one of the times we were having a conversation about his faith crisis, I asked him, Jake, what has kind of gotten you through? And he says, I can't deny my testimony of the Book of Mormon. You know, I can read all these things about church history, and I can struggle with this aspect of policy, but I can't ignore what I feel and what I've experienced with that spiritual inquiry, that lens of faith with the Book of Mormon. And that has been his anchor. And so I guess I just want to invite our audience to consider, what are those diamonds in the rough that you've discovered this year? That maybe you've read the Book of Mormon a million times. That's not an accurate count.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot. If you have, let us know.
Yeah, please go on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube
should have
and
a show.
say, yeah, you need your show. We're going to give you real talk. No, we're not. But I think if you have gone through it a million times, what are the things maybe in 2020 you have discovered that are the new diamonds that can be like an anchor, like my friend Jake has found?
That's really interesting because, you know, I've read through the Book of Mormon a few times. I'm not quite to a million.
Not a million.
I'm just halfway there.
But you are a seminary teacher.
I'm halfway there. But I actually, honestly, I picture this, and I know it's a goofy way of thinking about it, but when I open my Book of Mormon and I'm in this mindset, I think about, like, oh, it's going to sound funny. Don't make fun of me.
I won't.
It's almost like opening the closet to Narnia. Oh. It's like a portal, you know what I mean? That
the wardrobe?
Yeah, the wardrobe. So it's like opening it up and going into a different world, and it's a place where God can talk to me.
I would never make fun of a C.S. Lewis reference.
Well, yeah. But anyway, I think about that. I'm like, okay, take me where I need to go. Take my heart, my mind where I need to go. Sometimes I am almost like, I don't care if I learn anything, but I need to feel something today. And I think you can find that. Like you just showed me. I'm in here with Mormon. I've read Mormon 8, him being alone, and talked about how depressing that is 1,000 times. I never thought of that feeling with someone that I love who has dementia. But it's exactly like that. Just took me into a space to align with my grandma, and to align and to be grateful for the promise of a resurrection, where her mind will be made whole and all of that stuff. So I can have my grandma back, you know. And so anyway, that's kind of the way I look at it, is it's less about the words for me and more about the space it puts me in.
But that's what a living scripture is,
Yeah,
right?
I think
you have
so.
a really beautiful way in which you teach, or powerful way in which you teach testimony around the Book of Mormon. Do you want to share
Yeah, so
that?
I do this, and I learned this on my mission. We call it the triangle of truth. That's what we called it, just to be kind of funny. We thought we were being silly. But it's basically you take the Book of Mormon, Joseph Smith, and the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And you can read this in the introduction to the Book of Mormon, but it basically says if one is true, they all are true. They all stand or fall together. And the reason why that's significant is I don't know if everyone has an equal strong testimony of all three. Like for me, my testimony of the Book of Mormon
Is solid.
Is like, that is, like you were talking about, that is, I'm with him on that. And so I rely on that when I read things in church history that really, rub me the wrong way, and certain church policies that I might personally feel like could be adjusted and improved. And I always go back to, okay, let me go back to what point of the triangle do I really rely on the most? And for me, it's the Book of Mormon. For a lot of people, it's Joseph Smith. And I love Joseph. I really do. But sometimes there's stories that I've got to be like, okay.
They're triggering.
Yeah, and I need to reconcile that, and I need to, go through a spiritual inquiry with it, or the church. And so anyway, if that's what I would tell you is when you're questioning one of the others, go back and make sure you're standing on the faith of the point that's the strongest for you.
I love that.
So should we finish up with miracles?
Yes. I love talking about hope and miracles, and it kind of crosses over into a couple of areas, but I felt like you had a really good insight on the idea that, here's Mormon, we've talked about in past episodes, who lived through this terrific, horrible, war-infested experience, and Mormon 5:2 talks about how he was without hope, and then you jump forward into chapter 9 and he's raised a son that says, behold, I will show unto you a God of miracles. And so, how did you have this father that was this war-hardened general that had witnessed so much trauma, but was able to raise a boy that is like, I'm gonna show you that we have a God of miracles. By the way, I live in a cave and I'm alone and everyone's died, but I still believe in miracles. So what are your thoughts on miracles?
So let me just take it one way, and I'll tell you a great talk for this. Elder Hallstrom of the 70 gave a talk about miracles, and I don't have the reference on me, but it's a really good one. But basically he does this, because we all want to believe in miracles, but what if you pray that you'll travel home safely, but you don't? Like, what happens when the miracles don't happen? Like when you're in that space, when you have faith that you can be healed, but you're not healed. And for me, I wrestled with depression, and I know you have with chronic illness and stuff, and obviously with Meg and some other things. And so it's like, what do we do when we don't get healed? What do we do in that space? And there's two quick things I would mention. Number one is Elder Bednar, and it's a much longer story than this, but I'm going to give you the shortened version. But Elder Bednar gave a story where he was invited to, there was a young man and woman, they just got married. They'd been married months when the young man was diagnosed with a fairly serious form of cancer. And so they went through this process, and they were going through the process. They'd had blessings, and somehow they knew Elder Bednar, and they had him come in to give him a blessing because nothing was working. Nothing was getting rid of it. And as they were counseling together, Elder Bednar, he said, I asked this couple a question that I had never before considered. And the question that came out of my mouth was, I know you have faith to be healed, but do you have faith not to be healed? Does your faith exist outside of mortal outcomes? And I think most of us have faith to be healed. I really do. I don't know that. When I read, I was like, do I have faith not to be healed? Do I have a faith in God that even though I don't experience the miracle now, but my faith exists outside of that outcome? That is a different kind of faith. And so I think about that one a lot. The second one comes from the Old Testament, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And this is in Daniel chapter 3, verses 15 through 18. I'll summarize it really quickly. But they won't bow down to this big idol of King Nebuchadnezzar. So the punishment is death. So they go to put him in the fiery furnace, and basically King Nebuchadnezzar, he doesn't want to kill him. He likes these guys. But he says, are you going to bow down? And they say, listen, King, we want you to know, be it known unto thee, O King, we will not bow down and worship your God. And we think, and I'm paraphrasing, but they say, we think our God is going to deliver us, but if not.
But if not.
But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, we will not bow down to your idols. And that but if not principle. So the faith not to be healed, and then but if not. And we know, like prophets, we know Abinadi. Abinadi, the outcome was different for him.
And then Lehi and Nephi are saved from the fire.
And they're saved from the fire. And so anyway, that's where I would go. Those are the two places I go when I think, okay, when the miracles aren't happening, how do I deal in that space?
I think of Shadrach and his brothers are like what verse 38 says in chapter 8, that they weren't ashamed. They weren't going to be scared out of their faith. But I also think Elder Bednar just added to his previous talk in the last conference when he talked about the idea of the family that did lose their child to cancer. And they said, we're all in.
Yeah.
And we
That's
trust
right,
God.
all in.
We're all in. And so I think that is some mighty discipleship, right? To really surrender to God and trust that He is a God of miracles, but like Joseph Smith, he healed everyone else's children, and then he and Emma kept losing their own children.
Yeah.
Right? And how do you reconcile a God of miracles when the miracle isn't coming on your doorstep yet? I love considering and pondering on that. So our invitation this week is to consider what miracles you have had that confirm your faith, because maybe you haven't had the miracle of healing from a chronic illness, depression, anxiety, or maybe you're lonely and you've never been married and you're thinking, wait, everyone else has had this miracle, but do we have the all-in philosophy and testimony burning in us? And can we pull from other miracles in our lives? Is it the miracle that you keep showing up and trying? You know, I think sometimes that's the miracle, right? That you haven't given up. And so we'd love to see if you want to share with us on our social media platforms what miracles you've experienced. I think when we share miracles, that's why the scriptures are filled with both the stories of the miracle and the story of the not, right? Yeah. Because we're having a range, hopefully, of experiences. And maybe for you, the miracle is the car started today, or that you finally did get a job after some unemployment. Whatever that is, please share with us, because your miracles will strengthen the faith of others as they read them. And especially this week, we could use a lot of miracles flooding social media.
Absolutely.
So thank you for joining us this week on Real Talk, Come Follow Me, and we'll see you again next week.